The most dangerous narcissist in your life isn't the loud, attention-seeking man in the corner.
No.
It's that quiet, reserved woman next to you, the one who always seems just a little bit wronged by the world, a little bit softer, a little bit more fragile. I know. It goes against every fiber of how we're taught to see people, especially women. But after 45 years in this field, seeing hundreds, no, thousands of lives unravel, let me promise you the covert female narcissist is playing psychological chess while the rest of us are barely figuring out the rules to checkers. Let me take you back. I can think of patient after patient, strong men, brilliant women, even entire families, absolutely decimated by covert female manipulators. Folks who came in looking like they'd been through a war they couldn't even describe. The reason is simple. This type of narcissist hides in plain sight. She's the professional victim, the emotional Houdini. She slides right under your radar by making you think she's the one who needs saving, and meanwhile, she's the one orchestrating all the chaos. You want to talk about perfect camouflage? She wears vulnerability like a designer suit. She'll tell you about every injustice in her life, her childhood, her exes, how she's always the victim at work or with friends. She isn't aggressive or demanding, at least not outright. She whispers, "Nobody understands me," or "People always take advantage of me." It puts your guard down, doesn't it? The moment you step in to protect her, to nurture her, to make things better, that's when you're most at risk. And I'm not just giving you one man's opinion, folks. The psychological research backs me up. Studies show a significant number of female narcissists fly entirely under the radar. Where the classic narcissist wants to be seen, the covert wants to be pitied, wants to draw you in by making you their rescuer. You'd be amazed how many people, especially highly empathetic folks, fall straight into the trap. The numbers don't lie. Female narcissists are much more likely to operate in the shadows than out in the open. But why do we miss them? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Society doesn't expect women to be predators. From the time we're kids, we're programmed to see women as nurturers, caretakers, the ones who need protection, not the ones who might be quietly pulling the strings and turning your life upside down. So we trust. We forgive. We explain away their inconsistencies. We even feel guilty for suspecting them in the first place. Let me turn the table a little bit and ask you this. Have you ever known a woman, and I want you to really think here, who always seemed to be just fighting off the latest disaster, telling you about how everyone seems to throw her under the bus, but everywhere she goes, conflict just seems to follow? You end up questioning reality, blaming yourself, apologizing for things that don't make sense but feel like your fault anyway. That right there is a pattern. Drop me a comment and tell me what you've seen. I know these people walk among us because for every email I get from a victim, I hear another story about a so-called poor thing who leaves a trail of broken relationships in her wake. And let me warn you, you ain't ready for what I'm about to break down next. The covert female narcissist isn't just playing for sympathy. She's engaged in psychological warfare. Her tool isn't brute force or rage, it's subtlety, confusion, femininity. She'll make you question not just your perceptions, but your worth, your sanity, even your sense of reality itself. The danger is real because you're not prepared for it. You keep thinking, she couldn't mean harm, not her. She's so gentle, so wounded. That's exactly how she wins. This is high stakes, folks. I'm telling you, I've watched survivors crawl out of the wreckage of these relationships, marriages, friendships, even professional partnerships, absolutely shredded and not even sure what hit them. And the reason is you never see the knife coming. You expect a predator to roar, not to cry. Everything I'm telling you is a call to awareness, not fear. Once you see the patterns, once you understand how manipulation can be camouflaged as kindness, weakness, or tragedy, you can start to protect yourself. You can start to pull back the curtain and realize not every damsel in distress wants to be saved. Some are counting on being underestimated, counting on your empathy as their first weapon. So keep listening, keep watching, and most of all, be willing to rethink what you know about danger, about victims, about power, because what comes next is going to flip your script, and trust me, once you see it, you can never unsee it. C, a female covert narcissist doesn't want the attention that drama brings. She's all about subtlety. The way she moves through your life is like a ghost, leaving fingerprints on everything and somehow never getting caught. She doesn't hurl accusations. She sows doubt. She doesn't bark commands. She whispers suggestions, lets things slip, or simply stays quiet at the most pivotal moments. You know what's dangerous? The absence of noise. You could sit next to her for years and never realize, but by the time you wake up, everything valuable, trust, confidence, sometimes even your sanity is already gone. Let's talk about how she does it. By suggestion, omission, or those ambiguous signals that make you question if you're just overthinking. She'll drop a comment like, "I'm surprised you remembered our anniversary. I was sure you'd be too busy." Then watches you tie yourself into knots, wondering if you're really that inattentive. She may never say you're neglectful, but you'll feel that accusation down to your bones. That brings us to passive-aggressive mastery, the way she disguises insults as care. She might say, "Oh, you're going out with your friends again tonight? I guess I'll just find something to do alone," laced with just enough sugar you can't call it out. And if you do, suddenly you're the one with the problem. "I was just saying I'm fine." Don't be so sensitive. It's a double whammy. She strikes, then convinces you to apologize for hurting her feelings. Her real artillery. Guilt, shame, and that nagging sense of obligation. She'll make you second-guess your worth, your priorities, your intentions. Should you treat yourself to something nice, she'll remind you quietly, always quietly, of that bill she had to cover last month. She never forgets, and you can never do enough. Even when you act from kindness, somehow it's still not quite right, never truly appreciated. The scariest part, the long-term psychological effects aren't just my opinion. Research is clear. Covert tactics can be every bit as poisonous, often more so than the obvious kind. Victims report higher stress, self-doubt, anxiety, even symptoms of PTSD in severe cases. Why? Because the wounds aren't visible. No arguments to replay, no outbursts to rationalize away. It's just a creeping fog that, over time, convinces you something must be wrong with you. Let me ground this with a real case that's stuck with me for years. There was this couple, sweet as pie on the surface. The wife would never raise her voice. Instead, she would ask her husband if he remembered that thing she mentioned last Tuesday. He'd say, "No," and she'd sigh, just loud enough. "It's okay. I know you're busy." Over months, he started questioning whether he was absent-minded, whether he was even a good husband. But here's the kicker. She was gaslighting him the whole time, setting up conversations she knew he'd forget because they never actually happened. He became obsessed with making her happy, terrified of failing her. That's not love. That's control. All the while, she paints herself as a long-suffering wife. When friends or family gather, she's got stories, always the one who endures, the one who sacrifices, who forgives. You wouldn't guess she was calculating every story for maximum pity points, or angling to get someone else to subtly pressure you to step up. And if someone tries to call her out, she spins it, flips the script. "Why are you attacking me when all I do is try to help?" Triangulation is another signature move. She'll confide in your best friend about how hurt she is by something you did, watching as the friend softens, then carries her message back to you. She never looks like the villain. No, she's just so confused or not sure what to do. Those little seeds end up growing into a thicket of mistrust and division. At work, at home, in friend groups, people start picking sides, and more times than not, they side with the person who seems the most wounded. Here's where it really gets insidious, the information gathering phase. She studies you like a scientist with a new species. Notes your fears, what makes you happy, what you avoid. It's all data she'll use later. Maybe it comes out as selective empathy. "Oh, I know you worry about disappointing your parents," after which you'll find yourself bending over backward not to let her down, too. Everything you reveal is ammunition. Social manipulation is key. Enablers, what we in the field call flying monkeys. She'll never dirty her own hands if she can help it. Friends, co-workers, even your own relatives, they become pawns, championing her cause, defending her, running down her critics. Most of the time, they have no idea they're being manipulated. They just want to help the sweet girl who's had it so rough. Why does all of this work? It's simple. Covert narcissists prey on universal vulnerabilities, our need to be liked, our desire to help, our guilt over not being perfect. They pick people who have big hearts and open doors. The very traits that make you a good friend, spouse, or colleague become roped into service against you. I remember working with a patient whose mother did this to an Olympic degree. She'd act fragile, always on the verge of collapse, drawing her daughter in for constant support, and then turning cold the minute her daughter needed anything back. Over the years, this became so internalized. The daughter thought she was selfish for wanting a life of her own. She nearly missed out on a marriage because she felt too guilty, leaving her mom alone. When we unraveled it, all the signs had been there, just invisible. If you take one thing away from this, let it be the understanding that manipulation doesn't have to look like aggression. Sometimes the sharpest weapon is a whisper, a sigh, a silence so loaded it rewrites reality inside your head. That kind of mind game is every bit as destructive as the loudest meltdown. You just don't see it on the surface. And once you're deep enough in, you start thinking maybe you're the problem, maybe you're the crazy one. That feeling is the final lock on the cage, right as the bars close around you. Now, we're wading deep into something I've seen play out more times than I care to count. The way a female covert narcissist draws you into her world with a performance that would win awards if there were a trophy for most perfect partner on paper. Let me tell you, nobody sets a stage like this type of woman. Here's what throws you off from the get. Gosh, she seems like everything you'd ever hoped for. She's charming, attentive, inquisitive, hanging on your every word. You find yourself thinking, how did I get so lucky? The conversations flow, the ladder is easy, and it feels like meeting an old friend you just forgot you had. And that right there is bait number one. The illusion of perfect compatibility. It's not just similar hobbies or tastes, but the feeling she gets you before you have even spelled yourself out. She's done her homework, and you won't even realize there's a syllabus. But here's the plot twist. She isn't just a good match. Out comes her story. Maybe it's a heartbreak, a betrayal, a traumatic childhood event. You'll notice the tales are just raw enough to make you ache. Suddenly, you're protective. I can heal her, you think. Her vulnerability draws you in, gluing a bond. But here's what you've got to ask yourself. Is this trauma real? Is it exaggerated? Or is it manufactured for dramatic effect? Because a covert narcissist knows nothing makes the hook set deeper than the urge to rescue. And then comes the love bombing with her own secret recipe. This isn't the generic shower you with expensive gifts and grand gestures playbook. Oh no. She meets your emotional needs with laser precision. The compliments land with perfect timing. She's always available, always excited about your dreams, always praising your insights, the intimacy. Turned up to 10, maybe physically, maybe emotionally. She fills your insecurities with warm assurance. It's intoxicating, and suddenly she's carved out a space in your life and your mind that you never knew was empty. Now let's talk about the mirroring. She becomes the upside-down reflection of your very best self. You share your favorite movie. Somehow it's hers too. Your values. She couldn't agree more. The things you want in life, you'd swear she's reading them right out of your playbook. What you're not picking up is how she's scanning you for every detail so she can reflect it right back. She gives you a sense of being truly seen. But what's really happening is you're falling in love with your own reflection. This isn't just my 2 cents. There's research to back up what's going on under the hood. Covert narcissists are masterful at reading attachment styles. If you've got anxious attachment, she'll be extra warm and doting, promising security. If you're avoidant, she'll be a bit elusive, just out of reach, so you're always working to win her over. She knows the dance, and she choreographs it to get exactly the reaction she wants. Let me walk you through a case that stuck with me. This young man came into my office convinced he'd found his soulmate. She said all the right things, rode the highs and lows of his life right alongside him. It wasn't long before he wasn't just relying on her. He was dependent, addicted to that flood of validation and sweetness. Meanwhile, she'd start peppering in little tests, seeing if he'd compromise his values or put her above his own family. When he hesitated, the sweetness gave way to subtle disapproval, and like clockwork, he'd scramble to win her back. Now, here's where things get sticky. She shifts from the perfect partner to someone you feel compelled to save. The rescue fantasy cranks up. Suddenly, there's an emergency, a job loss, a betrayal by a friend, a crisis only you understand. You become not just a boyfriend, girlfriend, or spouse. You're a knight, a therapist, a hero in shining armor. The trap tightens because you're no longer just engaged, you're invested, responsible for her well-being. You ignore red flags out of loyalty and hope, and she's gathering information all along, your dreams, your secrets, your childhood wounds. Nothing is out of bounds. She'll listen, she'll hold your hand, she'll sympathize, but what seems like deep trust is an extraction mission. Every truth you tell is taken down for future use. Down the road, she'll know exactly where to press when she wants pliability, guilt, or compliance. Pretty soon, dependency isn't an accident, it's the whole strategy. She inserts herself into every aspect of your life, your routines, your friendships, your family gatherings. She's indispensable. Not only are you happier with her, you're anxious without her. And if you think intimacy is just a natural part of the love story, think again. Sex, affection, acts of devotion, they become rewards, bargaining chips, sometimes even punishments. She gives and withholds with a plan. Physical closeness makes you feel special, bonded. But she knows that for someone starved for genuine love, every kiss, every touch is a hook set deeper. Let me tell you who's most likely to fall for this: the empath. If you are sensitive, eager to help, used to putting other people's needs before your own, you are walking into the lion's den. The very goodness and depth in you, your ability to care, to forgive, to nurture, those are the strings she's tugging. If you're sitting there recognizing bits and pieces of your own life or someone you love, I want you to take this as a warning. These relationships don't start with betrayals and red flags. They start with connections, shared dreams, the feeling you finally met the one who gets it. But as soon as she knows she's got you, the dynamic shifts. The game begins. And by the time you realize you're not just in love, you're trapped. And what comes next is a whole new level of manipulation. Let's get straight to it: intermittent reinforcement. Now, it might sound like jargon, but trust me, your brain knows exactly what it is. This is when rewards, in this case love, warmth, attention, are given out at irregular intervals. Not every time you do the right thing, not even most times, just enough. So you keep trying, keep hoping, keep thinking, if I just do better, if I just figure out the secret key, she'll be loving again. That hope, those random payoffs, trigger the same neurological pathways that make gambling addictive. It's not knowing if you'll win that keeps you pulling that lever. And it's not knowing when you'll get affection that keeps you hooked on her approval. And here's where it gets cruel. She flips the switch from hot to cold again and again. One day, she's the sweetest, most affectionate person you're walking on air. The next, she's distant, cold, maybe even gone. No warning, no explanation. Now you're caught in a loop, trying to figure out what you did wrong, how to get her warmth back. It's dizzying, and that's the point. The push-pull isn't about real intimacy, it's about getting you to chase your tail. Let's talk about artificial scarcity. This is where she convinces you her love, her approval, her time. These are rare, precious things. Not just anyone gets them, and if you mess up, you lose your spot. So you work like crazy to hold on. Somewhere along the way, you start believing that making her happy is the most important thing you could ever do. Let me tell you right now, love is not supposed to be a limited edition product. Pretty soon, disappointment becomes the norm, not the exception. The cycle goes, you try, you fall short in her eyes, she withdraws. Maybe she throws in a little blame for good measure. If you really cared, you'd know what I need, or I thought you were different. You buy into it. Next thing you know, you're apologizing for things you can't even name. Now, let's get into the meat trauma bonding. This is the dark magic happening underneath it all. All that chaos, periods of stress, tension, then brief relief literally locks you in. Neuroscience tells us your brain gets flooded with stress hormones, then soothed when things turn sweet again, reinforcing the bond every time. You mistake this roller coaster for intensity, even for true love. Why? Because the lows are so low, the highs feel like salvation. Let me bring some science to the table. Research shows that cycles of unpredictable reward can hijack the brain's reward system, just like a drug. That constant hope for a return to good times keeps you stuck even as the relationship wears you down. It's a pattern seen in everything from casino gambling to abusive relationships. The brain gets rewired to expect chaos as the price of affection. I've worked with a man, I'll call him Jakey, who was married to a covert narcissist for nearly a decade. Every time Jake thought he'd finally won her over, she'd pull away, cold as ice. Then, out of nowhere, a little touch, a kind word, and he was back, convinced it was all his fault. If he could just try harder, things would be okay. He never left. He was always waiting for another crumb of hope, and those crumbs were deliberate. She knew exactly when to dole out a compliment, a soft smile, just enough to keep the hook set. We call it the breadcrumb strategy, a steady diet of minimal validation, enough to keep you alive, never enough to let you thrive, the side effect. Insecurity. You start questioning everything, your looks, your intelligence, your basic goodness. If she's upset, it must be you. If she pulls away, it must be you. You end up working twice as hard for half the affection, and somewhere along the line, you lose sight of your worth. She's testing the boundaries. Can she treat you worse and worse? And will you still stay? Each time you forgive, she knows she can push a little farther. The big question I hear in my office all the time, why do people stay? It's not stupidity, it's not weakness. It's biology, psychology, a tangled mess of hope, nostalgia, and good old-fashioned fear. You remember the good times, the perfect days, the rare praise, and you want that version back. You believe you can fix it if you're patient, if you try harder. That belief is the trap. I've seen folks waste years, even entire lifetimes, in these cycles. High achievers, strong men, compassionate, successful women, doesn't matter. If you grew up working for love, if you learned early that affection is scarce, intermittent reinforcement will break you down and build you up in equal measure over and over until you don't know which way is up. Let me tell you about a woman I saw who'd been in a marriage like this for 25 years. Every family event, every anniversary, she clung to the occasional good day, living for the moment or in her case, she would be kind again. When we finally named the pattern, she wept, not for the years lost, but for the relief that she wasn't crazy. These mind games aren't an accident. They're a calculated tool to get you compliant, desperate, and endlessly forgiving. And when that stops working, when you finally begin to see through the fog, well, let's just say the playbook has much darker pages waiting. Stay sharp, stay awake, and don't ever forget, real love should feel safe, not like survival. Let me warn you right out of the gate, not all victims are victims, and if you haven't met a professional victim yet, just wait. These folks don't just play the sympathy card, they go all in, build the whole deck, and deal straight from the bottom. See, the professional victim is a master at making their pain real or fabricated, front and center, not just in private, but everywhere they go. You'll find her at the center of every crisis, the wounded party in every story. She's got an entire identity built around being wronged, mistreated, misunderstood. And you, well, you're cast as either her rescuer or her tormentor. There's never a middle ground. And here's where it gets especially complicated: illness. I have seen cases where chronic ailments, sometimes genuine, sometimes a string of conveniently unprovable symptoms, become the biggest weapon in her arsenal. So maybe it's migraines that strike at every family gathering, or a mysterious condition that flares up any time she might have to pull her weight. You find yourself rearranging plans, walking on eggshells, maybe even feeling guilty for being healthy at all. If you don't show enough sympathy, the guilt trip comes faster than lightning. You just don't understand what I'm going through. No one does. But she's not done. She calls up old wounds, maybe things that happened long before you ever met her. You have to understand, I can't trust people because of what I went through. This isn't about healing, it's about justification. She uses her pain as a suit of armor, a way to dodge responsibility for present-day hurtful behavior. If she lashes out or manipulates, there's always a tragic backstory to excuse it. Let's talk about the nuclear option, emotional terrorism. When all else fails, she threatens to self-destruct. Maybe it's talk of self-harm, maybe a sudden health scare. The message is clear. If you don't do what I want, something bad will happen to me, and it'll be on your head. That's not just manipulation, folks, that's psychological blackmail. And I've got to say, it never fails to rip families apart. Don't just take my word for it. Scientists have weighed in too. Psychological research shows a clear pattern. Certain individuals exploit empathy by constantly positioning themselves as victims. These aren't isolated cases. They're documented strategies for manipulating compassionate, well-meaning people. If you've ever wondered why you feel compelled to help, even when your gut tells you something isn't right, now you know victimhood is a powerful social lever, maybe the most powerful there is. Let me walk you through a story from my own files. I worked with a family where the mother consistently had one crisis after another. She'd call her children at all hours, tearfully recounting the latest injustice or health scare. Nobody else's needs ever took center stage. In fact, if anyone tried to claim a little space for themselves, things went downhill real quick. Years went by and the entire household revolved around keeping her stable, comfortable, content. You can bet it wasn't healthy. And the resentment, once it boiled over, turned into a mess that took years to clean up. You ever witness someone cry at the drop of a hat, turn on the waterworks whenever the heat's on? We call those alligator tears. Manipulative crying, theatrical breakdowns, a genuine emotional crisis. Maybe sometimes, but more often it's a performance calibrated for effect. The message, if you make me upset, you're the villain. If I'm crying, you have to make it stop. It puts you back on your heels every single time. But here's a trick straight from the playbook, the turning of the tables. You draw a boundary, try to stand up for yourself, maybe even just ask for a little breathing room. Suddenly, she's not just the victim, she's a martyr. After all I do for this family, how could you treat me this way? It's masterful, really. The more you insist on being treated fairly, the worse you look in the court of her public opinion. Before long, folks start to believe her side of the story. You lose allies, legitimacy, sometimes even your own sense of what's true. And she doesn't work alone, trust me. The social manipulation runs deep. She'll recruit siblings, friends, even your own parents to her cause. Maybe you find out people you care about have gotten the sob story behind your back, and they're now pressuring you to do the right thing by her. It can happen at work too. Suddenly HR is hearing all about how you're cold, unfeeling, maybe even abusive. The network grows and the true victim ends up isolated. The worst part, responsibility is always someone else's to bear. She'll never admit a role in the chaos, never say sorry unless it's to get something down the line. If things go south, it's because you didn't try hard enough, didn't understand, just weren't compassionate enough. Why does this work so well? Simple people are hardwired to protect the vulnerable. Our instincts tell us to step in, to shield those in pain, to side with the person who's crying over the person who's calm. That's beautiful in one sense, but in the hands of a professional victim, it's your Achilles heel. And when life's little crises aren't enough, she has another card, the legal system. Suddenly, it's not just about feelings, it's about restraining orders, custody battles, calling the police for imagined threats. I've seen good people blindsided in court, suddenly forced to defend themselves against a web of half-truths and outright lies, all because they finally said, enough. The system, designed to protect, gets twisted into a tool for revenge. Here's what you need to keep in mind. When victimhood starts to lose its magic, maybe people catch on, maybe her target gets wise, the tactics don't disappear. They escalate. The strategies get more desperate, the threats more dire, and the collateral damage that gets bigger, too. If you recognize these signs, you're already ahead of most. Don't let guilt or pity blind you to manipulation. Remember, true victims seek healing, not power, understanding, not endless advantage. And you, my friend, deserve to live free of someone else's psychological games. Keep your eyes open. Keep your feet on the ground. And don't let the tears, no matter how loud or convincing they seem, keep you from seeing the truth. When a covert narcissist senses they're losing control, or worse, when you try to break free, that's when the gloves come off and the campaign begins. You'll see kindness dry up overnight, and if you aren't prepared, you'll get broadsided by the ferocity of it all. It starts subtle always. The covert narcissist doesn't storm out and start shouting in the street. No, sir, the smear campaign comes disguised as concerned. Whispers, late night text to friends, or a quiet word in the right ear. Before you even realize, she's spinning a story that turns your own network. Family, friends, sometimes your whole community against you. Suddenly, you're on the outside looking in. You know what's really destructive? It's not just the lies she tells, but the way she tells half-truths and twists real events. She'll call up everyone who trusts her and plant the seeds. I'm really worried about him. He's changed. I'm not sure he's safe to be around. She doesn't accuse, she proposes questions. Doesn't state, but wonders. The result, your reputation starts to take on water faster than you can plug the leaks. Folks you thought would always have your back, now they hesitate. Some pull away, some stop calling altogether. The next step, orchestrated isolation. These attacks aren't random, they're targeted. She deliberately undermines relationships that make you strong or give you support. I hate to say this, but I heard he's saying things behind your back. Or maybe you should be careful around her. She's not who you think. Suddenly, invitations dry up. Plans fall apart. Nobody can quite tell you what's changed, but you feel it everywhere. Let me lay it out for you, the Whisper Network. If you think rumors die quickly, you're in for a rude awakening. Nothing spreads faster than a juicy bit of gossip. And the covert narcissist is a master at lacing stories with just enough believability that people swallow them whole. I shouldn't tell you this, but I just want you to be careful. Little by little, doubt replaces trust. Then come the flying monkeys. She recruits allies, sometimes your best friends, sometimes even your own family. They act on her behalf, defending her, attacking you, sometimes without ever realizing they're in the middle of a manipulation campaign. These folks mean well, but they've been primed to see her as the innocent party and you as the villain cast in a drama you never auditioned for. Let's look at the research. Social scientists have studied what's called relational aggression, and let me tell you, women's social attacks can hit like a sledgehammer. They're subtle, persistent, and leave deep scars because they happen out of sight, but not out of mind. If you want an example, I worked with a woman who watched her sister destroy her marriage, not with a single accusation, but by sprinkling well-timed lies and doubts into her husband's extended family. Over time, the rift grew so wide you could drive a truck through it. It's not just your personal life either. The covert narcissist can take the battle to work. Maybe it's hinting to your boss that your hurt's not in it anymore. Maybe it's an anonymous complaint to HR. Maybe just enough innuendo that coworkers start treating you differently. Promotions pass you by, projects disappear. You might even find yourself quietly pushed out. And she doesn't stop there. If she's determined or desperate, she'll drag you through courtrooms, file reports, call the police over imaginary threats. All the while, she keeps the innocent act going. To the outside world, she's composed, reasonable, maybe even the peacemaker. If you get angry, You just feed her narrative. See, this is the person I warned you about. Welcome to the digital age, where a Facebook post or a group chat can do more damage than a billboard on Main Street. She jumps on social media, passive-aggressively posting about toxic people. And fake friends tags just enough context that folks know who she's talking about, at least those who matter. Maybe you're even on the receiving end of outright harassment from third parties, all rallied up by things she carefully let slip. The cruelest part is how believable she seems. I've lost count of how many clients have said, "But everyone loves her, how could they not see?" Here's why. She's been curating her public image for years. Empathetic, wounded, just trying to cope. And since she doesn't look like a villain, people can't imagine she'd ever act like one. Let me give you some strategies, because you're not powerless here. First, document everything. Save messages, record interactions. If it's legal where you live, keep a log of incidents. Second, resist the urge to fight back directly. Anything you say can be twisted, presented out of context, or used to reinforce her narrative. Lean hard into your support network. Share your side with a few trustworthy people, but don't try to play her game on her field. It's rigged if you can keep your distance. Sometimes no contact is the only way to stop the bleed. Seek professional guidance. Sometimes you'll need legal help. Sometimes just a good therapist to help you process the betrayal and confusion. Above all, know that this isn't a reflection of your worth. Being targeted by a covert narcissist says nothing about your character and everything about hers. So if you're feeling battered, cut off, stripped of your sense of self, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You can get through this. The smear campaign can take a lot from you, but it can't touch the truth of who you are at the core. Hang on tight. The light at the end is real, no matter how long this tunnel seems, and I'll be right here doing my part to shed that light for you. Well, hey, I want you to pull up a chair, because if you've ever felt tangled up with someone who left you doubting your own instincts, drained your confidence, and twisted your world without ever raising their voice, what I'm about to say could be your ticket back to freedom. The first, and maybe the bravest, step toward reclaiming your life is simply seeing the truth for what it is. When you see the game, you can finally play by your own rules. Let's lay out a simple recognition checklist, because spotting these covert female narcissists in your life means you're already halfway to safety. Start with what you feel in your gut. Does she always cast herself as the wrong party? Are there chronic health complaints or vague personal crises that seem to happen anytime she's expected to show up or support you? Do conversations leave you questioning your memory or your sanity? Maybe she'll shower you with affection in one moment, withdraw emotionally the next, and you're bending yourself in knots to figure out what invisible mistake you made. False humility, constant need for reassurance, passive-aggressive remarks, and behind it all, a consistent pattern: everyone else is the problem, never her. Now let's talk tools, starting with the gray rock method. I love the simplicity here. When you interact, you become as boring and emotionally flat as a pebble on a sidewalk. No drama, no reaction, no fuel for her fire. Keep your answers short, stripped of emotion, and unappealing. Don't take the bait, any bait. Over time, even the most determined narcissist will get bored and start looking elsewhere for their fix. It isn't easy, especially when you want to defend yourself, but this technique can cut off her power right at the source. But self-protection sometimes means playing the long game, and that's where documentation comes in. Don't rely on memory alone. Keep a journal, save texts and emails, jot down the dates, times, and content of conversations or incidents where you felt manipulated or gaslit. Track patterns more than dramatic moments. Small boundary erosions count just as much. This record isn't just for potential legal situations. It's also your anchor to reality when she tries to rewrite history and sell you the villain's role in her drama. Of course, you've got to enforce your boundaries, and I mean consistently. Start by knowing what you won't tolerate. What are your hard lines? Communicate them clearly and hold steady even when the pushback comes. Expect resistance. She may guilt trip, lash out, or enlist others to pressure you. Stand firm. If need be, limit your contact or cut it off altogether. Every time you reinforce your boundaries, you're telling yourself and her that you deserve respect and autonomy. Don't do this alone. Build a support system. Friends, family, professional counselors, and survivor support groups have your back. Group spaces can give you validation, shared strategies, and a sense that you're not crazy or alone. Connecting with folks who've walked the same road can make a world of difference and remind you of your worth outside her narrative. Sometimes you need more than moral support. If the situation is escalating or threatening your safety, seeking professional help, a therapist with expertise in narcissistic abuse, or legal counsel can be critical. Therapy like CBT helps address the cognitive traps, rebuild self-trust, and equip you with coping mechanisms. Don't wait for things to get dire. Getting help is a sign of strength, not weakness. If things have reached a breaking point, harassment, stalking, credible threats, know that legal protection is an option. Documentation becomes your shield now. Courts can grant restraining orders, and while the process isn't always simple or fast, it draws a line in the sand and can bring much-needed peace. Understand the requirements where you live, and don't hesitate to reach out to legal professionals for guidance. Let me share an example that sticks with me. Michelle, and she's given me permission to tell her story, spent years blaming herself for a marriage that was falling apart. Nothing was ever enough. Affection dangled like a carrot. Reality flipped so often she didn't know which way was up. But once she recognized the pattern, she started recording texts, conversations, her own reactions. Slowly, she set boundaries, built her own support system, and day by day, she climbed out. Leaving was terrifying. But on the other side, Michelle found hope, healing, and the kind of calm she'd once believed she'd never have again. And that's the healing process, small steps every day. The grip of trauma bonding loosens with time, support, and patience. Your nervous system finds its steady pace again, and your identity can grow roots outside of the role she cast for you. New relationships feel different. You learn to spot the red flags early: excessive need for validation, boundary pushing, love bombing. Don't ignore your gut. The patterns repeat, but now you know the signs. Here's what takes it full circle: teaching others. Share your hard-won wisdom. If you reach just one person, help them see the warning signs or give them courage to set boundaries. You're transforming pain into power, not just for yourself, but for every survivor who comes after. Let me pause for a second and talk about self-forgiveness. It's so easy to blame yourself. How could I let this happen? Why didn't I see it sooner? I want you to hear this. These manipulations were designed to fool even the brightest, kindest, strongest people. Being targeted says nothing about your weakness, only the strength someone else hoped to hijack. Forgive yourself for what you didn't know. You are not to blame. Now is when personal empowerment comes alive. Reclaim your story. Start small, reconnect with things and people that lift you up. Set new goals that have nothing to do with anyone else's happiness but your own. Every step is an act of courage, and every day you stand firm is a day you write a new chapter. I'll leave you with this. You can't save them, but you can absolutely save yourself. Don't stay caught in the web out of pity or hope for change. Your only obligation is to yourself and your future. I want to hear your stories, your questions, your breakthroughs, your challenges. Drop me a message, share your experience. You never know who you'll help by speaking up. Remember, you deserve relationships built on respect, honesty, and genuine love, not manipulation masked in vulnerability. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and above all, believe you are worth the effort it takes to heal. Next time, we're diving into healing after trauma bonding, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Have a good week, and don't ever mistake apparent weakness for safety again. Sometimes the most dangerous are those hiding in plain sight.